Good morning, everyone, and welcome to NWACUHO's First Friday's webinar for March 2015. My name is Kate Flowers, and I'm the Professional Development Committee Chair here, and my main goal is to work on the webinar series. And so we're really excited today to have an excellent webinar presentation from our NWACUHO Best of the Northwest winner from our annual conference, Lauren Adams. But also with me is the Washington State Rep, Michelle Finley-Benton.
Good morning. We're very excited to have you all. This is, I think, going into year 4 of the First Friday webinars. So very exciting stuff. We're so happy you could join us this morning.
Great. So listen and learn, very exciting. You can tweet. Also, if you do have questions, Lauren will answer those at the end. So just message us in the group chat option on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll just keep a list of those, and then Michelle and I will chat with Lauren about them at the end of the presentation. But I'm so excited to introduce Lauren Adams for Lessons from the Middle, the Unspoken Competencies of a Mid-Level Manager.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to present to you this morning. I'm excited to share, my own lessons with everyone. For those who are a part of the UW home team, please don't give me the side eye. I have the old template from communications and marketing. I will have the boundless template ready to go before I go to NWACUHO, so I will fix that. For those who have no idea what I'm talking about, continue to not know what I'm talking about and roll with it. Lessons from the Middle, the Unspoken Competencies of a Mid-Level Manager. I have done some research about mid-level management, having entered into a mid-level position, and just wanted to share some insights that I have gathered. So this morning we're gonna go through a couple of things, but I just want everyone to know that my goal for this presentation, if you are an entry-level professional and you are getting ready to make that mid-level transition, or you've already made it, I hope that the things that I share with you this morning will help you prepare and give you a little bit of insight, things that I wish I had known prior to becoming a mid-level manager. If you are a mid-level manager, I'm going to help you normalize some experiences. You are not alone. Trust me when I say that. If you are a supervisor of mid-level professionals, I hope that this presentation gives you some training opportunities and professional development ideas to enhance the skills of your current mid-level professionals. And then I hope we have a good time. This is not going to be a stiff presentation. I hope to incite some laughs. Please do. Please laugh, even though I can't hear you. So what I like to say about presentations is that the presenter and those who are listening, we have an unspoken contract, right? You are hopeful that I know what I'm talking about and that you're going to gain some things from me. And what I think is helpful is that you need to know a little bit about me. Why am I able to give you this presentation? Besides doing the research, what about me says she knows what she's talking about? So to give you a little bit about me, I am in my second year here as a mid-level professional, as a facilities manager in the unit of facilities and custodial. But prior to that, I was a resident director here at the University of Washington, and that was for 2 years. Prior to my role as a resident director here at UW, I stepped out of the housing profession and was actually an operations manager for a large retail store in New Orleans, Louisiana. And so that gave me a huge knowledge and breadth of experiences that I currently use in my position as a facilities manager. When you work outside of the housing profession, you learn a lot. When you work outside of academia, you learn a lot about people and relationships. And so I'm going to bring a little bit of that knowledge this morning. And then prior to that, I did have a traditional residential life role. I was an area director at my hometown, New Orleans, Louisiana, at Tulane University. So I have a breadth of experience that I hope to share with you this morning. So what do I mean when we talk about mid-level managers? And I am not one for lots of text on the screen, so forgive me, but I feel like this is important, an important definition. So in 2000, a gentleman by the name of E.J. Rother wrote the article, Mid-Level Administrators, What We Know. And in that article, he wrote, mid-level college and university administrators are integral to the life of an institution. These staff members are experienced professionals, usually possess graduate degrees, and have a strong commitment to their profession. They comprise the largest administrative group in most college and university systems. And so I think about that, and I was like, okay, mid-level professionals are probably the meat and potatoes of a university or a college. They are doing a lot of great work. They are integral to what we do and how we accomplish our tasks and goals. And so I'm like, okay, mid-level managers, got it. But the other part of my presentation has to do with competencies. And so I'm like, okay, well, what is competence? I love this definition about competence because I think it succinctly defines what competence is. It's the ability to do something successfully or efficiently. What I find interesting about this definition is when you look at the synonyms associated with competence, you see mastery on this list. And what I hope to impart to you today is that competence, yes, involves a lot of skill and proficiency and accomplishment, but mastery is something that is something we're always working on. I don't think that it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years to master things. I think it takes a lifetime to master things. And I worry that when we see competence or competencies, we are like, I've mastered this, I've moved on, and I have nothing else to learn. So I hope that you learn today that we are constantly learning and that competence is something that we're always learning. So when I did research about competencies, I love when people do my homework for me. I love that. It makes things easy, makes me able to copy-paste. And so when I went to the NWACUHO website, I found on the National Housing Training Institute name page 2 sets of competencies. And I'll get to the second set in a moment. But in 2005, Porter created a list of actual 50 competencies, but pared down this list to the most important. I looked through this list and I'm like, decision-making, check. Motivation, check. Like, I got this, I'm good. When I was a resident director, I felt like my personal characteristics and my character made me a great supervisor of student staff. And I'm looking at this and I'm feeling pretty good about, you know, when I made my transition over to mid-level manager, and I was like, this is something that I can do. And then I was like, okay, well, there's apparently another list too. And so shout out to the hometown team. Our executive director, Pam Schrieber, and one of her colleagues in 1991 and again in 2000 created a list of 35 competencies, and then again pared that list of 35 competencies down to the list that you see here. And I'm like, this is great. I have gained a lot of knowledge. I've gained a lot of skills. I am doing great. I can mediate conflicts like a boss. I am great at these competencies. I think that I am well prepared to become a mid-level manager. And so I'm like, I'm well prepared. I'm clearly flawless. I am clearly able to do a great job. I am just, Beyonce is backing me up. So clearly I'm very good at what I do. However, I got into my role and recognized there are some things that I didn't know. There are things I wish someone had told me. I recognize that there are all these lists of competencies, but there are unspoken ones that folks didn't tell me. And so I come to this mid-level paradox. There is an article by the folks that are listed down, as I cited, McKinney, McMahon, and Walsh. It was an article that I discovered in the Harvard Business Review, and the article's name is Danger in the Middle, Why Mid-Level Managers Aren't Ready to Lead. And they found this important paradox, meaning that they define mid-level managers are important, yet they're undertrained. And again, not one heavy for text, but I found it very important, so I'm going to read this to you. Mid-level managers receive fewer resources, manage more people, and are less engaged than all other employee groups. For years, too many organizations have invested heavily in training for senior executives and new managers while paying relatively little attention to the mid-level managerial core. This barbell approach has exacted a heavy price in terms of underperforming and demoralized middle managers who lack the networking, planning, and team-building skills necessary to excel in the flat organizational structures that are so prevalent today. And I love this because barbell is exactly how I felt at times in my position, particularly during my first year. When you look at a barbell, you see that obviously there are two heavier ends, and so you've got your entry-level professionals on one end and your senior-level professionals on the other end. However, the folks who are doing the weightlifting, as we go back to the mid-level managers, are the largest administrators we have on campus. They are light, and a center, and they are doing the lifting for those either in the entry level or the senior level. What I also found interesting in reading the same article is that McKinney, McMahon, and Walsh presented that only 15% of North American companies, universities, and institutions felt that they didn't have enough mid-level managers who were qualified successors to become upper-level management. So that makes me go, but I'm so competent, but I'm so good, but, and then I thought this. So am I really prepared? Am I really ready? Am I really learning all the things that I should know? Am I asking all the questions that I should be asking? And so with that, I looked at those lists of competencies that I showed you and created what I thought were the most important. These are my top 5. And the top 5, I will explain to you in the next couple of slides how I got to these top 5, but they are supervising who and how, understanding the bigger picture, the one, the only, sitting at the adults table, and understanding self. These are my top 5 that we're going to go over this morning. So when I chose those top 5, I did a comparison of the competencies from Porter, Dunkel, and Schrieber. And basically I found that there were 6 from these lists that were the same. And if they're the same, they must mean that they're pretty important, that high-level professionals are saying you need to know these things and they are repeated. So basically, this is what my competency list looks like in relation to the 2 that I showed you before. So we're going to go over these today and how they relate to one another. If you got a better glance, I kind of scrolled through a little bit quickly on the competency comparison list. But if you notice and you're like, hey, Lauren, you're missing one. You said 6, but I only see 5 here. Those 5 I showed you before, but we do not have time to go over crisis management. And if I could go over crisis management, I would phrase that as when insert expletive here goes down, because there are nuances to understanding crisis management that happens at a higher level when you are a mid-level manager. So without further ado, we're going to get started on the unspoken competencies, and we're going to start with supervising who. So I need you to imagine your current staff. Visualize your current staff as it is, your supervisors or administrators, yourself, your peers. Just visualize all of those folks. And then imagine that you are moving into a mid-level management position, and you're not only going to supervise student staff, but you're going to supervise people who were once your peers, who are now going to, be people who probably know all of your dirt, know all of your secrets. What is that like? You're going to be supervised, or you're going to work with folks who are now your colleagues. So they were once your supervisors, but now you're professional staff too, and y'all are all on the same level. So when you're supervising, you have to put yourself in the place of, have I supervised these types of individuals before? Am I ready for that? The great part about having the opportunity to have supervised student staff, you know all the nuances of how to relate to people through race, gender, ethnicity, religion. You can have those hard conversations, but can you translate those hard conversations to people who are of a different variety of staff? And that's something that I found challenging in a mid-level position. I've never supervised a classified staff member, and there are nuances to the professional and personal lives of those types of staff members that are very different than supervising student staff. Have you supervised temporary staff? Have you supervised unionized staff? Those are types of staff that you could be supervising, and what does that mean and what does that look like? Have you supervised staff who may not need a lot of supervision? I am very fortunate to be a supervisor of a staff member who does not need a lot of supervision, and that's excellent. However, how do I make sure that this person is getting what they need in the position that they're at? Are they fulfilled? Do they feel as though they are being challenged? Am I being a good supervisor to them in terms of support? What does that look like? And I haven't had that experience before, but I have it now. Have you supervised staff that are older than you? There is a push-pull relationship with supervising staff who are older or younger than you. of, are you going to take my job? Are you taking things away from me because technology is up and coming and I am quote unquote older, so I may not know more about that? Am I the young whippersnapper who's going to try to boss you around? There are some nuances there that need to be developed, and can you work on those relationships so that you're the best supervisor that you can possibly be? And then telecommuters are new supervision piece that I think a lot of folks aren't thinking about. How do you engage a person who is rarely in the office? And they're in the office because they're working hard and they're providing good things for you, but you don't see them, but they're a part of your team. How does that work? What can you expect? And what is that relationship about? And so hopefully you get to think about the types of folks that you're going to supervise. The nuance that I learned is that instead of trying to supervise all of these people as individuals, supervising how becomes less focused on the individual and more focused on the team. And going back to the article that I referenced from the Harvard Business Review, for those of you who can't read this very well, I'm going to read it aloud to you. The truth about managers as a mid-level manager is the most powerful way to affect direct reports' behavior is to manage the team as a whole by fostering commitment to a shared purpose and shaping a positive team culture. So you are developing a team rather than spending a lot of time developing an individual. And as a resident director, as an area director, I did a lot of time managing individual student-staff dynamics rather than focusing on an overall team approach. And as a mid-level manager, the team approach is what becomes most important. And so when you think about supervising a team and who's going to be on your team, know that a team approach is the best approach that you can take. So the next competency that I like to go over is understanding the bigger picture. And what I mean by that has a lot of meanings. And what I've learned is that when you become a mid-level manager, you have a series of thoughts. Sometimes they come all at once, sometimes they come scattered, but sometimes they involve the following. I say this a lot in the job. Once you understand the bigger picture, there are lots of pieces and components that come together. There are a lot of compromises that you have to make. And so I sigh and I say, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works, because I understand a lot of things that maybe folks at an entry-level position just don't have the knowledge about, not their fault, or those who are in upper-level management who aren't on the ground and nor do they need to be, and so they may not understand how any of these things work. I also have the following thought. So true, so true, so true. There are little things that are important to some folks on your team, and you hear them and you want to validate it, but it's true, ain't nobody got time for that. There are priorities that need to be balanced, and you want to do those things, but sometimes what's important to some is not important to the greater good, and you don't have time for that right now, but you want to be respectful of the ideas that people are throwing your way. And then sometimes there are no words. And as a shout out to my favorite enterprise captain, I have to agree with this right now. It's just, and that's where you're at. And I want folks to understand that this is normal. You're not alone. This happens when you begin to understand the bigger picture. And when you begin to understand the bigger picture, this is what this means. So you begin to have a very different decision-making process. Going back to the other two lists of competencies, decision-making becomes key. And understanding the bigger picture, that means that you have different sets of priorities and different sets of priority shifts. You are moving from a lovely sailboat that you drive to a very large yacht, where there are lots of people who work on the yacht, and it's fancy, and it means something a little bit grander. What does that mean? There's a different set of priorities there. You have departmental priorities versus campus priorities. How does that work? What do you choose? What's most important? And sometimes, to some people, you're choosing something over something else, and that's not necessarily what that means. Sometimes that means that we have to say no. I remember a very old Sesame Street, way back in the 80s, where all the Muppets do this song and dance about the word no, and it's basically no, 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 no. Those who are from the babies of the 70s and 80s know what I'm talking about, and we basically learned that no is a bad word. You know, just how can just one word with just two letters keep so much from getting done? Like, how, it's so bad. Like, we don't want to say no. However, as a mid-level manager, you say no, but you say no with homework behind it. So when someone says, hey, Lauren, I'd like to do this, and my answer is no, know that I've done the homework. I've done the math, I've run the numbers, I've done the logistics, and I'm saying no because how much work it actually takes to do something that you want to do in 5 minutes, we don't have the 5 minutes to do it in. Compromise. Oh, there's a lot of compromise involved when understanding the bigger picture. And for the next 3 bullet points, compromise, working with staff across multiple departments or units, or working with internal and external customers. I'm going to use one example. Part of my job responsibilities involves coordinating evacuation drills on campus. And while for many of the staff who are a part of those evacuation drills, when I come to their building, I show up, and I show up with a multitude of staff who work with me to make these evacuation drills happen. However, behind the scenes, there's a lot of compromise that is involved. I work with the signal shop and the alarm shop staff. Those are classified individuals, and so evacuation drills can't occur at certain times during the day because I interrupt their lunch or staff breaks that are legally bound to them. They have to take them. They get them. If we have drills after hours, meaning after 5 o'clock, that's overtime. And I have to make sure that we have the budget that supports that. I work with a variety of different units within my department, and when you have an evacuation drill during a business day, that interrupts their operation. And if folks have to answer the phone and be available to other staff and students, what does that look like, and how do I make sure that I am meeting those needs? And sometimes I interrupt the executive director's office, and that means I have to shift their meeting or her meeting to a different place so that an alarm doesn't go off when she has an important meeting. And so I have to work with all of these different units, particularly their alarm shop staff when we have evacuation drills in the middle of football season to say, Lauren, it is Monday Night Football. We can't have drills at this time. Can you move it to a different Monday? I do the best I can to work with folks. So we need to understand the bigger picture, and sometimes you're not going to make everyone happy. And I believe that we want to make everyone happy, but when you understand the bigger picture, you make some people happy all the time and not everyone happy all the time. And that is very unsettling. It doesn't make you feel good, but you know when you're doing great work, you understand the bigger picture and you move forward. The third competency, the only, it references interpersonal communication. Again, speaking from my own experiences, when you are the one, you could be the one staff member with the identity that you have or the affinity that you have. As an example, and I'll get personal with those of you on the phone. Working in facilities, you do a lot of work with construction folks. For those of you who don't know me, I identify as a person of color. I am African American. And so when you work with construction, they tend to be largely, as a group, white older men. And so me showing up into a group that obviously folks don't look like me and folks don't expect me to show up, there's some nuances that outside of housing and residence life, there isn't a lot of background in terms of social justice. So unfortunately, one day I showed up and I introduced myself amongst a group of colleagues as well as outside vendors and construction staff. And one of the gentlemen approached me and was like, "This is great. It's nice to meet you. I had no idea I was going to be working with Claire Huxtable." And I kind of I don't know how to respond. And I at the time, I had no idea how to respond. I go home and I share that with my family, my husband and my mom. My husband, who's white Southern male, goes, "Go to HR immediately." My mother says, "That's so nice. What a nice man." And in context, when you recognize my mom as an older person, that gentleman who gave me what he thought was a compliment, both my mom and that gentleman thought it was an actual compliment. Out of context, it is not a compliment. Borderline racist, if you ask myself or my husband. But we have to understand that when you are the one and the only, or excuse me, the one in this instance, there are things that happen to you that other people may not be able to identify with you because you are the only one and they haven't seen you before. And that, race is a very salient identity, but what if you are the only one in your new mid-level management position who has a family? What if you're the only one that doesn't have a family? What if you are the one person in your group who doesn't drink and we tend to socialize around happy hour? You are that one. So you need to think about those things because when you come from entry-level positions, there are lots of different people, and you're so excited to get to know different people and explore different identities. That tends to go away once you become a mid-level manager. You get to meet those people later on, and I'll get to that point in a couple of slides moving forward. But know that you may be the one, and what does that look like? And then there is the only staff member of your type with no peers. What if you are the only person on your campus that does the job that you do? What does that feel like? Do you feel isolated? Will you feel isolated? Who do you reach out to? And that's when interpersonal communication skills become very important. Who else on your campus does a job similar to you? Who are your contacts? Who can you ask to for help? Who at another institution or around the region, who can you ask for help? I don't know that if she is on the line right now, but Dawn Snyder was a huge help to me. I was suggested to call her for questions about something related to my job, and I was like, I have to cold call this person? Are you serious? Someone doesn't know me. What if she's like, why are you calling me? But I called her, and she was a huge help to me in answering questions. And I think when you don't know who to call and you don't know who your, not necessarily allies, but who your peers are that can help you, it can be pretty tough. So know that you may be the only one at your institution, you may be the only one in your department, but there are others, and you need to seek those folks out so that you can get help. So in doing some research about being the one and the only, I found an article by the folks listed on the slide, Schlossberg, Waters, and Goodman. And in 1995, they developed 4 helpful transition elements to aid new or newly promoted mid-level managers. And basically, it's called the 4 S's: situation, self, support, and strategies. And what they mean, pretty much exactly what you see on the slide, so I won't go too in-depth with them. But situation, timing, control, duration. How long do you see yourself in the position? Are you see yourself in there long term? If so, then making sure that you aren't the one and the only and you have what you need to do your job well, you're probably going to want to do some research in figuring those things out. Self. I will say that the caveat to self, when Schlossberg, Waters, and Goodman did their research back in the day, they did not include race, ethnicity, or sexual orientation when they were talking about self. They only included age, gender, and experience and values. So if your salient identity involves race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, please know that you have some extra work to do. I will say that. Support. What are your systems? What systems are available to you? If there aren't systems, can you create them, and can you create your own group? And then strategies. What coping mechanisms or stress management techniques can you use in the moment, at work, or outside of work? We always talk about work-life balance. This is what is meant here. What ways can you cope when things get rough? All right, so we're going to move forward. And we're going to talk about sitting at the adults table. And they're like, oh, goodness, Kanye West is on this slide. Kanye West is on this slide. Where is this woman going with this? So I will say first and foremost, I like Yeezy. I enjoy his music. I've been a fan since the college dropout, so I'm picking on him for a very specific reason. Kanye is very talented. He is a hard worker. He's good at what he does. However, he doesn't manage his emotions very well. Very often, usually on large-scale moments. referencing his outburst during Hurricane Katrina when he was on air with Mike Myers. Not wrong, probably not the right time to say what he said. If you saw the VMAs way back when, where he...
Lauren, I'm going to let you finish, but...
See, Michelle knows exactly what I'm talking about. She's probably going to say, actually, Miriam and Sue Ann should have won Best of the Northwest. You didn't do really a good job. See, these are the things in terms of managing emotions. When you're sitting at the adult table, you need to manage your emotions. So I'm going to ask that you not be Kanye when you sit at the adult table. You just say no, or you are wanting to have a Kanye moment and be him. Just think of what I said. Just think of this big no. No means no. And so what do I mean? When you're sitting at the adult table, can you appropriately give critical feedback? Can you appropriately articulate ideas? Can you be a casual conversationalist? Can you take ownership? And can you sing your own praises? Can you #humble brag? Now, cooperation and collaboration is the competency that I'm referencing when I say sitting at the adults table. Can you work with others in a cooperative way? And that often means giving critical feedback in a way that people can work together to move towards a goal. Can you articulate ideas on the spot? When put on the spot, can you say what you need to say in an efficient way? Can you be a casual conversationalist? You know, I hear behind the scenes, oh my God, I talked to Pam. Okay, well, what did you talk to Pam about? I don't know, but I just talked to Pam. Pam doesn't always want to talk about work. Chris J., if you know Chris Yaney, our assistant director here at UW, people just want to talk about random things. Maybe the weather, maybe football, maybe just random stuff. Can you be a casual conversationalist in front of those who are deemed very important? Can you take ownership? When you make a mistake, can you own that? Failure is a part of succeeding, because if you fail, that means you try again and you make things better. But when you fail, can you take ownership of that failure? A lot of folks can't, and it's important to do. Doesn't mean you're going to get fired. It just means that you have to own up to a mistake, move on, and do better. Can you sing your own praises? You know, when I first got into my position, I found it interesting that I was like, I'm doing all this hard work and the boss isn't talking about it. How come no one knows how awesome I am? I didn't sing my own praises. You know, it's hard to do. You usually sing your own praises when you are interviewing for a job, or you're talking amongst a group of people who already know you and who will already be proud of you. Can you bring up casually in conversation, or, you know, reference something that you've done in a group of others? You need to bring out that Jimmy Fallon, Justin Timberlake conversation, and you need to #humble brag. Do it for yourself. It helps your network. It helps you, you know, make sure that people know what you're capable of, and maybe you'll become involved in other things. And then, are you prepared? When you go to a meeting, are you coming to a meeting prepared? Are you looking things up while you're in the meeting? That doesn't do you or anyone else who's in the meeting with you any service. Going to the adults table means that you are prepared because you've already done your work and you're ready to go. I wish I could answer questions, but they're kind of coming in. I think people are just having fun conversation.
It's a good side conversation about your Kanye reference.
Okay. So the next topic or competency, understanding self, references motivation. For those of you who were able to go to the NWACUHO annual conference, you heard Larry Roper speak, and I learned about him prior to seeing him on the docket to speak at NWACUHO's conference prior to the conference, because he wrote an article and did a lot of research and work about supporting and supervising mid-level professionals. He did so speaking specifically about those who advise, but I think that what he had to say is very relevant. What motivates you to work? What motivates you to do good, great, or excellent work? What motivates you when you're frustrated with work? What, if anything, are you afraid of? And what is your philosophy? I love all of these questions, because when you're understanding yourself and you're in your position and your work is hard and you're trying to meet deadlines and you don't know if you're doing the backstroke or if you're simply treading water, You need to understand what motivates you to do really good work. Move to the slide. I asked myself this question, and I came up with, we're often held back not by resources, which, time, money, or other people, but by our own potential. Are you afraid of success? Are you afraid of, if you work really hard, yeah, you're going to go places. Are you afraid that you won't be successful? What's holding you back? And I found that I was afraid of what I could be, and so I didn't do anything. Or I did what I was supposed to and not doing a little bit more. I'm not going to get into a lean in versus we should recline debate, but there's a little bit of that in there, and so I ask that those of you find that balance. And if you are really interested in being successful, while Emma Watson was speaking in a very grandiose way when she spoke in front of the United Nations, if not me, who? If not now, when? If it's not going to be you because you have the idea and you know it can be successful, who's going to do it? And if you're not going to do it now, will it ever get done? And is it important to you right now to get it done? So if not me, who? If not now, when? I want you to, think about that when you think about being a leader. And a lot of folks will say, well, I'm a manager. But a good mid-level manager will act like a leader but think like a manager. And leaders and managers are very different, but you can act like a leader and think like a manager to get things done. And I think that encompasses all of the other four unspoken competencies that I spoke of, because when you can think like a manager but act like a leader, you are doing all of those things well. You haven't mastered it, but you are doing those things well on a high level consistently. Those of you who have been able to take part of the University of Washington Strategic Leadership Program, there's a competency assessment tool that helps managers navigate and elevate their competency levels. I have that worksheet available to anyone who wants it. If you already have it, I ask that you take that out and you work with your supervisor to come up with a plan of attack in terms of working on the competencies that you need to work on so that you become a more competent mid-level manager or maybe an entry-level manager. Who knows? During the presentation that I gave at NWACUHO, a couple of questions that came up was, love this. What do I do at my own campus? How can I make this relevant? How can I keep this conversation going? I think the self-assessment tool is one way to do that. I think having brown bag lunches with other mid-level managers is really important so that you can hear other concerns and thoughts of what other people are thinking, get them out there, and work on them collaboratively together. I think you can talk to your supervisor about where you want to go and how you want to be successful. If you are a supervisor, is there a way for your staff to do staff development, particularly if you would supervise a group of mid-level managers? How can you get them together to build their competencies? What can you do? I think that there's still a lot of work to be done for mid-level managers, particularly when you think of the barbell reference, but I think it's there and people really want to hear this type of information. I went through things quickly, hoping that we can get questions going and conversations started. So I'm going to turn it over to Kate and Michelle to hear what questions they have. Thank you for listening to me this morning. I hope you found what I had to say helpful.
Thank you, Lauren. I am privileged to sit next to Lauren every day in the office, so #awesome. So any questions you have from Lauren? This really resonated with me as a mid-level manager. Some really great things to point out and name. So.
Absolutely. So if you have questions for Lauren, your audio is off. Hopefully you've noticed that by now. But we have that handy little chat box open where folks have been making a lot of wonderful Kanye West jokes. So if you have questions or thoughts and experiences that you would like to share, we would invite you all to type those into the group chat. I know we have a mix of folks here, some who are already in mid-level positions, some folks who perhaps are aspiring to those in the future. So we will take any questions that you have at this point. And while you're pondering those and typing away so that you're not just listening to static, we are very excited for these couple months after the conference. You know, a lot of you were able to join us in Salem. It's fantastic to have you. But we know that a lot of our region was not able to make it out to the annual conference. And so we are very excited to be sharing a few of our Best of the Northwest folks who placed in the top 5. Lauren kicking things off, as she'll be going to NWACUHO this summer to represent our region with this presentation. Next month in April, we'll be talking about international students. Miriam Yakub and Sue-Ann Huang from the University of Washington will be sharing Let Us Help You, a summary of international student research and its application to residential context. So you'll get more information about that soon, but we look forward to having you join us for more webinars. And we have questions. Hooray. So Brian asks, in your role, you work with a diverse type of employees, classified, union, etc. As you look back, how could you have better prepared yourself for that responsibility?
I think asking more questions. I think when you are going into a role and you are aware of the type of people who are going to be a part of your team or who you're going to work with on a daily basis, that's an excellent question to ask in your interview. What's the difference between working with a professional staff member and a classified staff member? What are those nuances? I don't think that that's a bad question to ask those people who you will be working with and do it on a daily basis. And then once you're in the position, I think asking supervisors who are classified supervisors, and I'm thinking of our custodial supervisors here at the University of Washington, what's it like to work with your staff? What concerns or issues or challenges do you have working with the people that you work with? Having asked that question now, they have answers for you. So I think that people have these answers and are willing to give them. You just have to ask good questions.
Great. So we have another great question. What are some additional strategies that you have learned as a person of color in the mid-level position? This person shared that they're the only person of color in their division.
That's a tough question. Things that I've learned about being a person of color. I think it's important to always remember you don't speak for every person of color everywhere. That tends to still be who people think you represent. I think having ownership of the diversity you are within yourself really helps, because that way you're not stigmatized as one type of insert person of whatever here. I think being a person of color on campus and not having other people having had the opportunity to interact with people who are different from them, being that beacon. It's like, oh, they're not all one way. I think that helps. And then you just got to be yourself. So if there are things that you are struggling with, you need to tell your supervisor. I have had that conversation with my supervisor in terms of these are the things that I'm working these are the things that are working against me, or these are the things that I've experienced. And rather than just keeping them all bottled up inside and walking into your office one day and saying, I quit, here are the issues that I'm having and what can we do to make them a little bit better. So I think you have to articulate what you need. I think you have to articulate where there are some gaps and how your department or maybe you yourself can make things better. I think you just have to make sure you are saying what you need and be open to the fact that people can't give you everything that you need.
So Kate Gannon had the question, how did you market yourself for the next step up in supervising full-time staff?
I asked a lot of questions. I was privileged to be able to be mentored by Josh Ganna through the mentor-mentee program. Plug for my committee there. And so I had the opportunity to ask questions to someone who recognized that I did good work and could see and saw my potential. I think those connections are really great, and you just have to make sure that you are connecting with people who can help you further yourself.
Great. How did you know you were ready to step up to a mid-level position?
Ooh. Honestly, I felt like I wasn't not necessarily my job wasn't challenging, but I had done it for a number of years at a number of institutions, and I was like, I can do something else, and I can be challenged. I wanted to do something greater. I think you get to a point where you can get comfortable, and I was comfortable.
I could probably have done my job for years, and I was really good at it, but I knew I was ready for a different challenge. And I think that's when you know you're ready to move on to a mid-level position or just a different position, whether it's, on the same level. If you feel like you could do the job for the rest of your life and you know you want a different challenge, go for it.
Great. These are wonderful questions, folks. If you have any more questions, please continue to type them into the box there. Really wonderful feedback. Really wonderful feedback.
Great. It's wonderful to feature one of the great presentations that was at the Northwest NWACUHO conference, and it's great to have this conversation going. I am also going to ask Lauren if she wouldn't mind if I sent out those competencies that she was talking about. So when I send out the thank you for being on the webinar, you will all get those competencies, which is great, and then you can try to put them to work as well. There's probably some great resources on your campus as well in terms of leadership programs and being a supervisor and mid-level manager. It's hard always sometimes to make time to be a part of that because there's a lot of things to do.
Yeah. And I'm going to piggyback on Lauren's wonderful plug for Northwest NWACUHO committees. I already piggybacked on it in the chat box, but committees are a really great way for you to market yourself and develop some professional development and further your network as well. So we restructured this year. We have 3 awesome committees that it's possible to be a part of. So if webinars are your jam, you're like, this was incredible, I'd like to help put more of these on, then our professional development committee may be a good fit for you. If you are really wanting to help folks engage, then the member engagement committee that Lauren is working with is a good fit. And if you really want to help get information out there, then the communication committee is a wonderful fit for you. All of our committees this year are working together to help make sure that there is as much information out as possible to our members and to help you all engage. We are only as strong as our membership. So I encourage you, if you're thinking about how to further those networks, how to think about next steps, how to shore up your skill set, that you consider one of our committees this year.
Right. And if you are sitting there going, I think I have something to teach the group, I think I have some great nuggets of knowledge, please go to the Northwest NWACUHO website and submit an interest in submitting and doing a webinar program. You don't have to have a full idea of what exactly you do as a program, but we will help you develop that, and we just want to get you plugged in. Webinars are a great way to start getting your ideas out there, and we help you along with that. So we also have another question here. What were some of the biggest surprises or most unexpected moments you had in your transition to a mid-level manager role?
Ooh, that's tough. Biggest surprises. Biggest surprises were, one surprise as a mid-level manager, and it came with not really understanding the bigger picture. You worked on something, whether it was an assignment, project, committee work, whatever, you worked on it, and then not because you did anything wrong, but we don't need that anymore, or that's not the direction we're going in, or can you do a little bit more, and being like, what? What do you mean I don't need it anymore? I spent like 2 hours on that. And I think that just comes with understanding that things are ever evolving, ever changing. As a resident director, you sometimes are silos. You manage your staff, you manage your building, and you do what you need to do to get whatever is going wrong or challenges or right in your building done, and you do it, and often it's not vetted. As a mid-level manager, you are working collaboratively with other people, and that work gets vetted a lot, and sometimes things go in a different direction, and the work that you do may not be needed anymore. Big surprise.
Mm-hmm. Great point. It's resonating. We're chuckling. Great. Wonderful. Any last questions for Lauren? This has been such a great discussion. Mm-hmm. Excellent.
All right. Well, lots of kudos from folks on here. So thank you again for joining us. Congratulations on the Best in the Northwest. We're very excited to have you represent us at NWACUHO. There are some amens out there to the biggest surprise comments. So you're not alone in that, though.
Hooray! I'm not the cheese.
No cheeses, but standing alone. So with that and with this great energy, we're going to close out this webinar for March. Thank you so much for joining us, and please look in your email box or check our website for our next presentation next month, continuing on with international students in Sue Ann and Miriam. We're excited to see you there. Please have